I am Scott Paxman. I work for Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. I've been there for about 30 years. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the statewide water picture and water infrastructure picture for the entire state. Okay, how many of you have heard of Prepare 60, Prep 60, P60 in your dealings? Couple of you. Okay, Prepare 60 was kind of an organization that was organized and put together by the 4 largest water districts in the state. That's Central Utah, they're kind of listed at the bottom. Central Utah, Jordan Valley, Weber Basin, and Washington County. And the reason they joined forces was because as a state, they serve or provide drinking water to about 85% of the population within the state. And it just made sense to us to collaborate and cooperate with things going forward. The purpose of the organization was threefold. One was to protect what we have. So all of you have aging infrastructure. It's 40, 60, 80, 100 plus years old that are in need of repair constantly or in need of replacement. And so, one of the goals is to kind of understand what that means as far as replacing and repairing some of that existing infrastructure. The second is conserve. Conservation is a huge tool that we're not going to ever be done with conservation. Our goal is to really conserve water so that we have a reasonable per capita use in the state. We're the second driest state of the nation. That kind of requires more water, but we also are the highest water use per capita in the nation. And so we've got to try to work on that a little bit more. The third is provide for the future, provide for the future population and for the future infrastructure to meet the population's need. So those are some of the reasons why that organization was done. One of the first tasks of the organization was to do a statewide water infrastructure plan. And it is exactly what it says. It's looking at the municipal and industrial water needs and infrastructure needs through 2060. And it's not just for the large water districts, it's for every entity throughout the entire state. So to help us organize that a little bit better, they were organized into river basins. And you can pick out where your river basin is. This study also included conservation of our water supplies by between 25 and 35%, depending on which end of the state you were from. And believe it or not, the northern end has the highest conservation rates required. So this is kind of the cost as divided up into the river basins. And I'm not sure you can even make that out, but totally there is about $58 billion with a B, billion dollars in infrastructure needs through 2060. About half of that, but a little greater than half, is needed for existing repair and replacement of the infrastructure. And again, that's not just the large water districts, that goes down to the cities, towns, smaller water districts, everybody that's delivering drinking water, that's where it applies to. And also, just below 50% is a requirement for the new population, for new infrastructure to meet the population's need. As all of you know, by 2060-ish, the population of Utah is going to double. Well, that's huge. That is a city of Layton added to the population every single year. That's hard to even imagine. And if you look at your hometowns, cities, and imagine it doubling in population, it's really tough to imagine that way, but it's going to happen. And by the way, 80% of that additional population is coming from our kids, grandkids, great-grandkids. So it's not just all incoming from out of state, but there are some. So what are the funding avenues for some of these large water costs, infrastructure costs? Well, we have 3 options. We have water rates, impact fees, and property taxes. So water rates is really to fund ongoing operation and maintenance of our existing infrastructure needs, including treatment and delivery. So that gets water from the source all the way to our taps. It's tied to our current use. In some places in the state, those rates will vary seasonally. I know Park City and some of the resort communities have different rates depending on the time of year. And by law, our water rates can only be used for the cost to capture, treat, deliver, and conserve water. So it doesn't include the cost for new infrastructure for new growth, per se. That's where impact fees come into play. It's a one-time payment to fund new facilities and water sources or water supplies for growth. Typically paid with the building permit, whether it's a resident or a new industry coming into your service area. They usually pay building impact fees. How many of you implement impact fees in your system? So most of you. It's a great tool because it really allows all the future water users, those new ones, tying onto your system to pay for some of that newer infrastructure and water source. So that's the whole purpose. So the third one is property taxes. You don't think of that as a water revenue supply, but most of you use that as a water revenue supply to help your infrastructure needs. We as water districts use that. It's a small payment on property tax that is over our entire service area. But what are the requirements for that? Well, it's again to pay for these large water projects, both past and present, that need to be repaid back to either the federal government or the state or whoever was the original financier. And it's interesting to note that Utah is only one of 8 western states that use property tax for water infrastructure. One key is that it helps provide a stable revenue source for financing those large water projects. I mean, for instance, we've got a project that's $50 million, just one project. If we were to tack that onto water rates for that 1 year that it cost to put that $50 million project in, you'd see a huge spike in water rates, and then the next year it's just not comprehensible. So that's the reason to have some of these stabilizing efforts. Another benefit of the property taxes is to provide the public good benefits that we really don't associate with water, but are directly related. Recreation is a huge benefit to the public. Endangered species protection and propagation is another one. Every watershed on that map, I would guess, would have an endangered species that they're trying to deal with and protect. Costs a lot of money. Flood protection. Haven't seen that in a couple of years, but it's going to happen again. I can guarantee you. But that is very costly. We have to build the reservoirs so that we're actually capturing those high peaks and creating a reasonable flow out of those reservoirs so that we minimize the amount of property damage from those large flood events. And then groundwater protection. Most of you, all of you, probably use groundwater as at least one of your sources of drinking water, and all of us have to expend some sort of funds for protecting the water quality of that groundwater, or else we're in big trouble if we don't. And the last benefit is just the added land value of bringing water into portions of the state that haven't had it. Okay, how does financing work? Well, in the past, it's quite different than it is right now. In the past, the federal government was the big financier of especially the large water projects. Our project was built in the 1950s. They expended 80 to $120 million, which doesn't seem like much in today's dollars, to build 7 large reservoirs, conveyance systems, canals, pipelines, aqueducts, and so forth. And we're currently repaying for that project. Well, The water conservancy districts are also bonding and funding for some of that. The cities, towns, and municipalities are all funding for a portion of their infrastructure needs. The state was involved or is involved in allowing for small loans in the, if I can read it, I can't read it. Oh, the revolving loan fund that's been around for years and years. But now, all of the federal funds, 99% of it are gone, or at least the financing portion of it. And so that's had to be filled in, a big portion by the state revolving fund, as well as the large water districts in their bonding capacities to build some of this major infrastructure. Okay, kind of skip around a little bit. So where is our water coming from and where does it go? Well, all the water that lands on the state of Utah goes somewhere. Well, almost 90% of it goes back to nature, whether it's watering the vegetation or wildlife or seeping into the ground, the deep ground aquifers. About 90% of it is unusable to us as the end user. 4.5% goes to agriculture. 0.8% goes to municipal and industrial depletions. 2.2% wetlands and reservoirs depletions. That's really mainly evaporation. And the net outflow includes the flows to the Great Salt Lake, those that we just can't capture, and also the evaporation from those huge lakes like Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake. And then there's a 1.1% might be left, it's a big question mark, that are available for future developable projects. So let's look at the 4.5 and the 8%. So 5.3% that is diverted for our use. There's about 80%, typically you hear that number, about 80% that's used in agriculture. And agriculture is a great benefit to the entire state. Food, fiber, they bring a big economy to the state. So it's something that's needed. 4% is used for residential indoor use, 6% for outdoor use, and 8% for industrial use. So doesn't leave a lot for the municipal water use. So in a pictorial sense, this is kind of how it works, at least for the large water districts. So our water supply, all of our water supply, originates in the mountains, in that snowpack that we depend on so much every year. And as that snow melts, it enters our rivers and streams, it's diverted into fields and farms, it's captured in reservoirs, and then it's diverted into our large water treatment plants where we treat it and deliver it to our wholesale customers, large cities and towns and water districts, and then is piped from there all the way down to each of our residences. So about 10,000 miles of large transmission lines throughout the state are needed to deliver water to customer agencies. About 100 miles per resident of infrastructure is needed just to get it to our tap. So again, just the emphasis on just the large costs and amount of infrastructure needed to deliver water to our residences. And this was kind of covered in a previous slide, but again, the roles in the water system, the federal government primarily played the role of financing, but has no longer been able to do that. The state has had to take that role over. They've been the planner and the regulatory agencies, and now they have to be the financer as well in a lot of aspects. And local, all of you are doing all the above. You're financing, you're planning, you're regulating, but you are the interface between the end user and the public agencies. So good on you, because that's a tough role. So what to expect in 2022? Well, there's another cooperative, I guess, and that's the H2O cooperative that was organized last year. That's a initiative that's between the Utah League of Cities and Towns and the Prepare 60, or the four large water districts. And really, that's for the benefit as you, as the end user, public facilities. So let's provide meaningful training, resources like sample ordinances for conservation, sample ordinances for water and land use. There's a ton of resources that are available that I hope you understand are available. And really, contact the league or Prepare 60, and we can help you with those resources. So just to talk about the drought of 2021 very quickly. I'm already out of time. That's crazy. So, as all of you know, in the media, it's been crazy, the amount of publicity that the drought has portrayed. But the entire state, for the entire year, has been either an extreme or exceptionally high drought levels. And to give you a little case study, this is in the Weber Basin drainage. We cover 5 counties, Davis, Morgan, Summit, and Morgan counties, and a little bit of Box Elder County is our district. So to talk about where we were at last year, this is the snowpack. So the green line is the average over the last 30 years. The red line at the very bottom is the historical minimum. The blue or purple line at the very top is the historical maximum. The black line is where we were. Okay, oh my gosh. Okay, that was a snowpack. So you can kind of see where we were at. We ended the season at about 80% of snowpack. So that's not horrible, but this was the bad news. This soil moisture was way below the historical low. It was just so far, there was just no moisture in the soil. So any moisture that came from the melting of the snowpack went into the soil, and we didn't see hardly any runoff last year at all. Precipitation, almost historical minimums. So on our drainage, we typically store about 220,000 acre feet. Last year, we stored 7,000 acre feet. So about 3% of our normal storage. And we deliver about 200,000 acre feet. So you can see the big shortfall there. So how did we make it? Most of the large districts have multi-year storage facilities. So in our district, we have, when our reservoirs are full, we can go 2 years on strictly storage, no incoming flows. So we can cover multiple years of below average, but last year was testing our limits for sure. Then we've got conservation, of course, a great tool. Source diversification, which is using groundwater in lieu of surface water. And we can only do that to a certain limit. And then drought contingency planning is another tool. But that's kind of where we're at. Appreciate your attention. Just know that we're here for your resource. So, thank you.